The rain came down in steady sheets, blurring headlights and turning the quiet road into a mirror of shimmering puddles. Most drivers hurried past, eager to get home, not daring to stop on such a miserable night. But on the side of the road, under the flickering glow of a broken street lamp, a silver sedan sat stranded, its hazard lights blinking like a silent cry for help. Inside the car, a woman sat hunched over her phone, her face a mix of worry and fatigue. She had already tried calling for roadside assistance, but no one was picking up. Each passing minute felt heavier, the storm pressing in, her hope sinking with the thought of being stuck alone in the dark. Just down the road, a pickup truck rumbled slowly by. The rain was relentless, dripping from Daniel's hood and running down his sleeves, but his hands moved with practiced ease. Years in the garage had made changing a tire second nature, yet tonight felt different. Maybe it was the storm, maybe it was the way the woman kept glancing at him through the window, equal parts grateful and guilty. She finally cracked the door open and stepped out, clutching her coat tight against the wind. "Please, let me help," she said softly, her voice trembling with both cold and embarrassment. Daniel shook his head, flashing a quick grin. "Trust me, I've got it. You'll just end up soaked." She hesitated, then stood nearby, almost as if she couldn't let him bear the burden alone. "I don't even know how to thank you. I was scared I'd be out here all night." With a grunt, Daniel loosened the stubborn lug nuts and replaced the damaged tire. His boots sank into the mud, his back ached from crouching low, but he never once complained. He worked quietly, methodically, the way a man does when kindness is more instinct than obligation. When the new tire was finally secure, he stood and wiped his dirty hands on his jeans, streaks of grease mixing with rainwater. "All set," he said simply, as though it were nothing at all. The woman stared at him, a little in awe. "You just stopped. You didn't even know me, and you stopped." Daniel shrugged, his smile modest. "It's just a tire. No big deal." "No," she said firmly, her voice thick with emotion. "It is a big deal. Most people just drove past." He avoided her gaze, suddenly shy. Kindness wasn't something he thought about, it was just something he did. "Honestly," he said as he headed back toward his truck, "if you really want to thank me, just pass the kindness forward someday. Help someone else when you get the chance." The woman opened her mouth as if to argue, but he was already climbing into his truck. She managed to call out over the rain, "At least let me take your number." He shook his head with a wave. "Not necessary. Just, be safe out here." And with that, Daniel drove away, leaving nothing behind but muddy footprints and the echo of a simple truth: sometimes the smallest gestures carry the greatest weight. The storm had begun to ease, the rain softening to a mist as Daniel's truck disappeared down the slick road. The woman stood beside her car, staring at the taillights fading into the distance, her heart strangely heavy. She had expected a mechanic to ask for money, or at least accept some kind of reward. But he hadn't wanted a dime. Not even a name. She slid back into the driver's seat, the warmth of the heater slowly replacing the chill in her bones. Yet the warmth in her chest came from something else, a feeling she hadn't known in a long time. Gratitude. Pure, uncalculated gratitude. For a moment, she sat in silence, replaying his words in her mind: "If you really want to thank me, just pass the kindness forward." It struck her. How rare it was to meet someone who gave without expecting anything in return. She had built her life in a world where everything had a price, where every gesture came with strings attached. And yet this man, soaked to the skin, tired from a long day, had asked for nothing more than for her to keep the chain of kindness alive. As she drove off, her hands steady now on the wheel, she made a quiet promise to herself. She didn't just want to pass it forward. She wanted to honor it. She wanted to honor him. Meanwhile, Daniel hummed softly in his truck as he drove home through the fog. The day had been long, but somehow he felt lighter than he had all week. He didn't know why. Maybe because he had ended his night with something that mattered. Maybe because, for a brief moment, he'd reminded someone that strangers still cared. By the time he pulled into his driveway, the encounter was already drifting from his mind. For him, it had been just another roadside repair. Nothing special. Nothing worth remembering. But for the woman, it was unforgettable. She couldn't shake the thought of him. The mechanic with tired eyes and muddy boots who had treated her not as a burden, but as a fellow human being. She didn't know his name. She didn't know his story. But she knew this, she would find a way to repay him. And when she did, it would change his life forever. 3 days passed. For Daniel, life slipped back into its usual rhythm. The garage opened at sunrise, the same cracked radio playing old country songs, the same steady stream of cars rolling in for oil changes and brake jobs. He didn't think once about the woman with the flat tire. Until the call came. "Hello, is this Daniel Miller?" The voice on the other end was crisp, professional. "Yeah, this is Dan," he answered, wiping grease from his hands, slightly wary. "I'm calling on behalf of the Winthrop Foundation," the woman continued. "Our director would like to meet with you personally. She says you recently helped her in a very difficult moment." Daniel frowned. "I think you've got the wrong guy. I'm just a mechanic." "No, Mr. Miller," she said firmly. She was quite clear. She insisted. Later that week, a sleek black car pulled up outside his weathered garage. Daniel, in his worn coveralls, looked out with confusion as the very same woman from the roadside stepped out. Only this time, she wasn't stranded, and she wasn't worried. She carried herself with quiet authority, the kind of presence that filled a room. "Daniel," she greeted warmly, extending her hand. "I never got the chance to thank you properly." He chuckled awkwardly, shaking her hand. "Like I said, ma'am, it was just a tire. Nothing special." But her eyes told him she thought otherwise. "To you, maybe. But to me, that moment reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten, that true kindness doesn't come with a price tag." Before he could respond, she continued, her tone shifting. "I'm more than just someone with car trouble. My name is Margaret Winthrop. I oversee the Winthrop Foundation. We fund projects that uplift working families and small businesses. And I want to help you." Daniel blinked, unsure if he'd heard right. "In your honor," she went on, "we're expanding your garage. Fully equipped, fully funded. More than that, we'll establish scholarships so young people from struggling backgrounds can learn your trade, under your guidance. You won't just fix cars anymore, Daniel, you'll help fix futures." For the first time in years, the mechanic was speechless. His throat tightened as the weight of her words sank in. What he had done in a few wet, muddy minutes on the side of a road was now rippling outward in ways he could never have imagined. The grand opening of the new garage didn't look anything like Daniel had imagined. He had pictured maybe a couple of new tools, some fresh paint, a "thank you" plaque on the wall. But what stood before him that morning was beyond belief. A wide, modern workshop gleamed under the sun, filled with state-of-the-art equipment. Banners fluttered overhead, Winthrop Foundation and Miller's Garage, building futures together. Families from the community gathered outside, children tugging at their parents' sleeves, curious and excited. Daniel stood frozen at the entrance, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He felt completely out of place in his faded work shirt and scuffed boots. But when he looked around at the faces, neighbors, customers, and a dozen wide-eyed teenagers who had already signed up for training, something inside him shifted. Margaret Winthrop stepped up beside him, smiling. "This is your legacy now, Daniel. Not just fixing cars, but giving people a chance." He swallowed hard, his throat tight. "I don't deserve all this," he whispered. "You do," she replied softly. "You gave without asking. And now the world is giving back." As the ribbon was cut and applause erupted, Daniel walked into the garage, surrounded by young apprentices eager to learn. He showed them how to hold a wrench, how to listen for the hum of a healthy engine, how patience mattered as much as skill. For the first time, he wasn't just a mechanic, he was a teacher, a mentor, a builder of hope. At the end of the day, when the crowd had gone and the sun dipped low, Daniel stood quietly by the garage doors, watching the kids laugh as they packed up their things. His chest ached, not from fatigue, but from a fullness he had never known. One simple choice, a decision to stop on a rainy night when no one else would, had changed everything. He had expected nothing in return. Yet here he was, proof that no act of kindness ever truly fades. Daniel looked to the sky, whispered almost to himself, sometimes, fixing a tire can fix a life. And as the garage lights glowed against the evening, one truth lingered in the air.